Welcome to the Atlantico podcast, where we talk about the science behind the Atlantico project, the Atlantic Ocean, and the human adventures experienced along the way. Here, we have conversations with guests from around the world who work together so that we can better understand, manage, and protect the ocean. So let's embark on the journey of Atlantico and discover the world that lies above and beneath the surface of the beautiful Atlantic Ocean. Welcome back to the Atlantico podcast, and in today's episode we are discovering another research and innovation project, one of the many that work on advancing the science and technologies and contribute to the advancement of marine sciences and its applications, so that together we improve our understanding, the management and protection of the oceans. So let's talk about the ASTRAL project with our guest today, Elisa Ravagnan, who is the coordinator of this project funded under the Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Programme. Hello, Elisa, and welcome to the Atlantico podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me here, Eloise, and the whole Atlantic project. It's really very nice to be here and chat with you.
We appreciate it. And first off, I would like our audience to get to know you a little bit better. And this is something we do with every single podcast. So can you tell me about your connection to the ocean? How did it start for you? And maybe you can also take us through your journey and how it has led you to where you are today.
Oh, wow. A very comprehensive question. So as said, I'm Elisa Ravagnan. I'm working in NORCE, Norwegian Research Center in Bergen, Norway. But I'm originally from Italy, actually Venice. So not really very in the, neighborhood of my childhood. In this moment, I'm an environmental scientist, so I did in university both my master and my PhD in Venice, and Venice is totally connected with the sea. I mean, is in a lagoon connected with Adriatic Sea. So it was normal for us to start to confront ourselves during our studies with the problems of the environment looking around us, and was water. So it started there. I mean, it has always been a connection, of course, from childhood. But what I appreciate, especially when I start studying, because the sea is so important for the local society, for the people to live, also to enjoy, but at the same time, since it sometimes it's used as garbage filling because you don't see. So it's been always this opposite side of approaching to water and the marine environment that has been really very interesting for me. So I started there, and I did part of my study here in Bergen. And I came back to Norway, first in Stavanger and then in Bergen. And again, it's a city, both Italy and Norway have a long coastline, so the relation with sea is extremely strong. So here, basically, I found the same attitude towards the sea as I see in Italy. So in a way, I feel really at home. The connection with the sea is extremely important here too, for the same reasons. It is just natural to continue. I'm focusing especially on data analysis and modeling in my past, but more and more on this multidisciplinary approach to marine challenges. So yes, you can study the environmental part, of course, but to find a solution, you need to have also the economical and social dimension aligned, because otherwise it's only, it stays on the book and will not transfer in real life. So this has been my journey, and now I continue with the same enthusiasm as before. I did different things in my past connected with the marine environment. Lately, I'm working more on aquaculture. That, of course, is an extremely big topic in Norway. Everything connected with the marine environment fascinating me a lot.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, and good to know you've been able to find the connection to the ocean, whether it's from the south in Italy or in the north. Water is everywhere surrounding us, and
yeah, the only change is that the temperature.
The temperature of the water and of the air, I guess, where you
Yes.
are now, So if we look at ASTRAL, so the project you're coordinating, and before we get into the sort of details of the project, I'd like us to set the scene and understand more about the context and the specific challenges within which you are working. So maybe you can tell us about the needs that are behind the project.
Yes. So Astral has been founded in the same call as Atlantico, but while Atlantico was more dedicated to the ecosystem, mapping the ecosystem and the challenges, we are funded on the sub-call that it was about aquaculture, so new value chain for aquaculture. So our project is really very focused on that. So aquaculture in general is growing, has grown everywhere in the world. So we are growing as a population. As we know, we need food to feed this population, and there is a limit of food chain in the agriculture production. And of course, the sea is also a huge provider of food for a growing population. Unfortunately, fishery, of course, is decaying because of overfishing, climate change, and many other challenges, and aquaculture is growing. So for example, Norway is basically aquaculture is one of the main income for the whole country. But it has to be admitted that as all the intensive way of producing food, aquaculture also creates challenges in the environment, especially when it's monoculture and intensive, that's for sure. So there is a limit, and if we need to grow, because still we are growing on the population, and we need to feed even more people, we need to grow the aquaculture in the right way. So we need to have an aquaculture that is sustainable and resilient to the different challenges that are coming our way, and has to be profitable in the sense that need to also to generate income, work for the people involved in it. So this has been basically the main starting point of Astral, is the short name of All Atlantic Ocean Sustainable, Profitable, and Resilient Aquaculture. So what we started to think about which type of aquaculture we want to address, since the call was directing especially for the southern part of the Atlantic Ocean. So implementing the Belém statement, that is a little bit uncharted territory for aquaculture. Yes, there is, but it's not as developed as, for example, in the coastal Europe. And we focus on this type of aquaculture is called IMTA, Integrated Multi-Trophic Aquaculture, where different species at different trophic level are grown together, and where basically one species usually is fed, and the other are growing on the uneaten feed or the waste of the first species. So the classical chain that almost everybody knows is fish, for example, fish, salmon could be, so fed fish, and then mollusk, like for example, blue mussels, that are capturing the particulate matter that is in the water and also from the fish, and algae that instead are capturing the dissolved nutrients, for example, in the water. So in this type of production, there is already, the circularity is already embedded as a concept with less impact in the environment. And I cannot see that we achieve zero waste, but we are trying to go towards the zero waste. So that was the central idea of Astral, but of course the project is way, way more. Our idea was to try to help the development of the aquaculture, especially in the southern hemisphere, not only, but in this case, in a sustainable way, using a method that has been around for quite a while. So it's not a new from now, but it's always been for more on the research side or small production, not full production as it is the, for example, the monospecies.
Excellent. So now we know what sort of challenge you're trying to address, and the main sort of vision or the main axis that you've chosen. So this multi-trophic approach. Maybe you can tell us in more details how you are addressing the issues that we've just mentioned, and what sort of activities you are undertaking, and what you are aiming to achieve in the end.
Yeah, so we have 4 case studies that we call the IMTA lab, and 2 are open systems, so cage in the water. like the classical way of doing marine aquaculture, and 2 are inland. So one is a recirculating one with the biofloc, and the other one is flow through. All our case studies are different from each other. Species most of the time are different from each other. If there are some species that are similar, the sequence is different. So we are trying really to cover as much possibility there is in a connection. So our chain with an open system are in Ireland and in Scotland, while the inland one are in South Africa and Brazil. And then we have another case study in Argentina, down in the south in Terra del Fuego, where there is no present aquaculture, intensive aquaculture. So they would like to start, especially an IMTA structure. So they are learning from the more experienced chain and how to do it in the best way. But all our chain are growing species that are local, so they don't want to impact the local environment, but they want to use species that are already present in the environment. So for this reason, we are really focusing on the different chains, because there is not a solution that fits all, but it has to be adapted to the local needs and opportunities. This for more the biological production part. Of course, all those chains, as I said before, we are evaluating them for the environmental side, social side, and economical side. So from the production, all the data that we are collecting are also feeding our 3 different type of assessment. We need to know what we are doing, both in the production, but also in the relation with the natural environment. So in towards and from the natural environment. So we are also developing sensors and biosensors, and also mathematical analytical methods to put together all the data we obtain in those sensors to really have the best overview about what we are doing. And some of those solutions are also low cost, because thinking about an area that is economically not so rich, so we need to adapt our solution again to the local needs and possibilities. So we are trying to develop solutions that are affordable, still valuable, but affordable for everybody involved. Of course, another very important part of this project is the connection with the stakeholders, both locally, then exchange international between the 2 sides of the Atlantic and between the north and the south. So we have quite a lot of activities on events and involving stakeholders and working with them. And another part that is also connected with the local population, and the fact the local population has to be on board, is our transfer of knowledge with the training courses, with training videos on everything we are doing in ASTRAL, so both production side, but also the technology and the assessment and the circularity, for example, to help not only students, but also people that want to start working on aquaculture and this type of aquaculture, to approach it, to understand what it is, to have the first clue and some details, and then they can take it from there and start to work on that. We have a special attention to females, so empowering women in aquaculture. Our partner in Nigeria is doing a very wonderful job on that. And also we are engaging with the younger generation, because you are never too young to understand the marine environment, and also where your food is coming from, and if you want to engage with that. So we are having a lot of activity in very elementary school, very low grade, and trying to passionate the children to this fantastic world.
Yeah, so a lot of activities, big ambitions for the ASTRAL project. And before we look at what you've been able to achieve so far, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the type of species you're working with in your different case studies.
Yes, you can find more details in our website. Definitely there is all the technical descriptions and so on. But One of our more complete change to have the most number of species is the one in Ireland, because they have salmon going down, they have oysters and then algae. They tried with also to have lobsters and other species of algae. While, for example, when we are talking about Scotland, they are focusing a lot on algae and oysters. And these are the two chains that we have, and they are also evaluating other extractive species to attach in this second part of the production in the project. While if we are going to Brazil, they are using a system that is called the biofloc for growing shrimp. Biofloc is composed by organic matter, microorganisms, and protozoa. So basically, if you look at the sea, and we have a lot of video in our YouTube channel, if people is interested, it's really very fascinating to see. It's like a green broth, quite dense, where they are able to grow shrimp, white shrimp, in very high density in tanks. And then this biofloc contains a lot of organic matter and nutrients from the shrimp production is passed in tanks with the oyster and tilapia, so fish, herbivorous fish that are eating this flock of this aggregate organic matter and dissolved matter. This is completing our chain, and then there is also some halophyte that are extracting the nutrients from the water. While in South Africa, they have two different chains. One is sea urchin and ulva, so and algae, and another one is abalone and algae. So basically, they are producing the algae from the waste of the sea urchin and then feeding back the algae to the sea urchin. So trying to have this circularity completed.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, and I'll go and check out those videos and learn more about all these chains. And I mentioned that you will talk about what you've been able to achieve so far. And ASTRAL started at the same time as Atlantico. It was in September 2020. It's just over 2 years now down the line. Where are you at? And maybe you can share a few results with us.
Yeah, it seems to be incredible that 2 years already passed and we have only 2 years in front of us. I have to say that like Atlantico, the challenge in the first 2 years has been the COVID, because of course some of the production had some troubles to start and to be up to speed because of missing equipment and so on. And also if we couldn't meet physically until last September, when we had the first really physical annual meeting together. Has been really very nice. But I have to say, I'm extremely happy and proud of the whole consortium because they step up and there's been basically no delay and no changes in our plans. So we will always find a way around, and the level of collaboration between the partners and between the tasks has been incredible, even if everything has been done online until basically last summer. Results. So we have done, of course, the first part has been focusing on the production and the different location. So they have done several cycle of production. One of the challenge with the IMTA, when I was talking about transfer of knowledge and teaching people about this, is that you have species with different production cycles. So you need to study more than one species and to know when to introduce another, how to introduce, and how the transfer of nutrients are going from one species to the other. So it's more complicated, definitely, than a monospecies. So depending on the chain, the partner have done different production cycles, but definitely more than 2 each. And we have very good results. We were able to go ahead with the circularity, so to increase the circularity, to lower the waste. This is easier, of course, in the closed system on land, because, of course, you are working in tank and the production is constrained. So the flux of water is constrained. It's a little bit more difficult when you have an open system, because then you have to place in the right position following the current. But we know the current is not always going exactly in that way, because it depends on the meteorological condition. But still, we have all the chain, all the location, we're able to to increase the circularity and lower the zero waste. And also we are having the first results also about the economical aspect. So far it has been more mapping what is the economical assessment of the chain. And in the second part, we will work more on a business model for those type of chains, giving more suggestions about how to make it fully profitable. We have developed the sensors that we want to develop, and they are already fully functioning in many of the locations. So now we are basically the validation on the field. That is what we want to see before saying that yes, and tweak if there were some challenges. When I was talking about monitoring the environment, we also have done a very extensive job of mapping the challenges for aquaculture given by climate change in the area where we have the location for the chain. And also we are mapping and providing solutions or providing knowledge for the microplastic presence, growth of pathogens and microorganisms in general. And another challenge for the open water, but especially for the open system, but also for the closed system, is the harmful algal bloom. So we had done a very extensive job on that. So let's say the first 2 years has been a lot of producing knowledge, mapping, setting the scene, having the first assessment done, and of course working with the stakeholders and the local population. So we had in all the locations, we had some interactive workshop with the more commercial industrial stakeholders, but also with local population to understand producing license. So if they agree with this type of production, what they think, if they are willing to, to have this type of production in their backyard, but also if it's important for them to buy products that are coming on this type of production. So we have produced a lot of reports. We started to have also published some peer-reviewed papers, and we have talked so much about the project in not in general, but also in more dedicated manner, not only in scientific venue like conferences, but we are trying to have the maximum diffusion and to engage also people that maybe are not really very familiar with aquaculture and the aquaculture jargon, let's say. Through our social media and our campaign, we are trying really to reach as much of the population as possible and interact with them. We are always happy if people approach us and say, oh, by the way, how is this? So they have a question, or maybe they have some solutions, some ideas. It's always welcome.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. And of course, we'll put all the information on how people can get in touch with you if they want to follow and if they want to engage with you. But yeah, let's talk about the next 2 years. So you mentioned, you have another couple of years and a lot of data gathered in the first 2 years. So I'm guessing what is coming next is using all of that data. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we have used already a lot of the data. So now I've been following the task as developing things and studying, but now it's really very the multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity is kicking in. So we are trying to have a dialogue between different parts of the project and try to find a solution that are shared and thought together. So with different heads in mind from the biology and from the economical side and more the communication side. So to put everything together. So of course, in the next 2 years will be more validation of what we have done and to implement the solution we have seen is possible in the first part of the project, to make a lot of recommendation both for the best practice in aquaculture and especially with this type of production, but also monitor recommendation, not only related to the aquaculture production, but also monitoring of the environment and which parameters are important to monitor for the aquaculture production and this threat that aquaculture have, as I say, nutrients, of course, but microplastic, climate change and harmful algal bloom. We have already provided some suggestions and some policy brief for the European Commission that actually is something that should come out from our project. So it's a way to give back to the society what they gave us through the grant. And we are continuing and even more connecting with the stakeholders, because now is the moment of communicate and have a discussion about the results and how the stakeholders see how those results can impact their life and their work, and how we can have the best use of our results and have some recommendation both for the production and the, for example, regulation. One of the points, especially for the IMTA, is the type of regulation is not there yet anywhere, basically, because, as I said, it's a complex system of different species, sometimes in the same location, sometimes in an area. So let's say is the legislation in general in Europe, but not only in Europe, we see is lacking how to do it. And sometimes it's also really very slow in picking up the challenge. So we are also working towards that and try to make a recommendation about how to implement this type of production in an easy and, let's say, not so challenged way for the industrial stakeholders or producers. So it's important that it's not only profitable, but it's also accessible to them without waiting for years and years to have, like, for example, the approval of their request. And of course, we are continuing with our transfer of knowledge and empowering women in general, engage the population, especially the younger generation. So this is something that has been a constant along the whole project, but is more and more interesting, especially now that we are able to get out, so to have a physical meeting and a physical encounter. Then there is more exchange of students, like internships, for example, and children visiting the location where we are doing aquaculture. So it's not more theoretical and pictures that is interesting until a certain point, but really touching with their hands what it means, this type of production and how it's done, and more fascinating about the marine environment, how we can use it without spoiling it, basically.
Yeah, and I think that is a nice place to end our conversation today. I have to thank you for the time you've been taking and for sharing your insight with us on ASTRAL. We'll put all the information about the project in the show notes so people can go and check these out and get involved, ask the questions they may have, or suggest some solutions that you might not have thought of. Thank you very much for our conversation today.
Thank you, Elisa, for this nice chat. Thank you for the project Atlantico for the invitation. And thank you for everybody that take the time to listen to this. It's not easy to frame a so huge project and so complex project in a few sentences. So I really hope it was clear. But as you said, the people are really very welcome to engage with us. We are really very happy to have this one-to-one conversation if needed. And yes, I hope to see you soon and to continue to collaborate between the two projects. That has been amazing so far. So we still have 2 years to go.
We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode and look forward to seeing you next time. You can follow the Atlantico project on our website on www.atlantico.eu, and you can also find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. All the links and information on the project and on today's episode is in the show notes. Atlantico is a project funded under Horizon 2020, a European Union research and innovation programme.